My name is Ashley Morgan, and I'm 24 years old. Last Sunday night at my family's weekly dinner, I finally worked up the courage to tell them I was in serious trouble. I said my business was failing, that I was about to lose everything. I needed just $3,000 to save my small marketing company. My older brother Tyler laughed in my face, and my sister Madison rolled her eyes. My mother just sighed and told me to stop being so dramatic and get a real job. They had no idea I was testing them. And they had no idea that in my new private offshore account, there was a balance of over $89 million. Before I tell you how this test became their worst nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever wondered who in your family would really be there for you when everything falls apart, hit that like and subscribe button. You're going to want to see what happens next. The story really started 2 months ago. The afternoon air inside my beat-up 2012 Honda Civic was stifling and humid. I was parked behind the Starbucks where I worked part-time, trying to catch my breath between my barista shift and my evening freelance marketing work. The leather seats were cracked from Arizona heat, and the air conditioning had been broken for 3 months. I couldn't afford to fix it on my salary of $12 an hour. I pulled out my phone during my 15-minute break, scrolling through emails while trying to mentally prepare for another 4 hours of building websites for small businesses that paid me barely enough to cover rent. This had been my life for the past 2 years since dropping out of ASU. Work at Starbucks from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then freelance marketing work until midnight, collapse into bed in my tiny studio apartment, repeat. That's when I saw it. The notification from the Arizona lottery app that I'd forgotten I even had on my phone. My heart didn't race. It didn't pound. It just stopped completely. I clicked the notification with a shaking thumb. Congratulations. You have won $173,000. I stared at the screen. The numbers looked fake, like a computer glitch. I read them again, slowly. $173 million. I blinked hard, locked my phone, unlocked it again. The numbers were still there, glowing on my cracked screen like some kind of miracle. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even cry. I just sat there in the oppressive Phoenix heat, closed my eyes, and took one long, slow breath. The kind of breath you take when the crushing anxiety about money, about rent, about groceries, about student loans, about whether I'd ever amount to anything, suddenly lifts from your chest like a weight you didn't realize was suffocating you. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Before I could even begin to process what this meant, my phone buzzed with a text. It wasn't another lottery notification. It was from my older brother Tyler, and the timing was so perfect, it felt like fate. The message read, "Mom's car died again. Needs $600 for repairs. Can you help? No money's tight, but you're good for it. Madison and I are strapped with the wedding planning. Need it by tomorrow. Thanks, sis." I looked at the $173 million notification sitting in my alerts. Then I looked at Tyler's text, asking for $600, with the casual assumption that I would just handle it, because I'm good for it. This was my family in a nutshell. Tyler, 28. My successful older brother who worked in tech and made 6 figures but somehow never had money when family needed help. Madison, 26. Getting married to her rich fiancé Brad next month, spending $40,000 on a wedding but couldn't chip in for mom's car. A cold, clear realization washed over me. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something sharper and more painful. I suddenly saw my family's pattern with crystal clarity. I was their backup plan. The responsible one. The one who always said yes when they needed money, but who somehow never crossed their minds when they were making expensive plans. I stared at Tyler's text, at the assumption, at the fact that he and Madison were spending thousands on wedding planning while asking me, the one making $12 an hour, to cover mom's car repair. I deleted the message without responding. I turned the key in my ignition. The old engine wheezed to life, making that familiar grinding noise that meant I needed about $800 in repairs I couldn't afford. I didn't drive to claim my prize. I didn't drive home to celebrate. I didn't call anyone to share the news. Instead, I clocked back in for my evening shift at Starbucks, made lattes for customers who were probably making more in a day than I made in a month, and smiled while they complained about foam art. My silence was the first weapon I would use in the most important test of my life. 4 days later, I was sitting in the marble-floored reception area of Harrison & Associates, one of Phoenix's most prestigious wealth management firms. The office was everything mine wasn't. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Camelback Mountain, original artwork, the kind of hushed elegance that whispered serious money. I'd researched carefully. I didn't want some strip mall financial advisor. I needed someone who dealt with the kind of money I was about to have. Ms. Morgan? A woman in an immaculate navy suit approached me. I'm Sarah Harrison. Please, come to my office. Her office overlooked the entire valley. The view alone probably cost more than my annual rent. I understand you have a lottery situation that requires discretion, she said, settling behind a glass desk that reflected the Arizona skyline. I handed her the printed confirmation from the lottery office. She examined it carefully, then looked at me with new respect. 173 million, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am. Have you told anyone? No one. That's why I'm here. She smiled. The first genuine warmth I'd felt from anyone in weeks. Very smart, Ashley. You're about to learn that winning the lottery isn't just about gaining money. It's about discovering who the people in your life really are. Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah and her team worked their magic. Trusts were created, offshore accounts established, legal protections built around my newfound wealth. I chose the lump sum payment, and after federal taxes, state taxes, and all fees, the final amount in my account was $89,200,000. $89,200,000. Even seeing it in my private banking app didn't make it feel real. During those 3 weeks, Tyler texted me 4 more times about Mom's car. Each message was more passive-aggressive than the last. The first was a friendly reminder. The second questioned why I was ignoring family. The third included a guilt trip about disappointing Mom. The fourth informed me that he and Madison had reluctantly covered the repair themselves, but expected me to pay them back when I could. I didn't respond to any of them. Sarah had warned me about this. People will test your boundaries before they even know you have money, she'd said. How you handle these early tests will set the tone for every relationship in your life. So I stayed quiet. And I observed. 3.5 weeks after winning the lottery, I was back to my regular life. Same cracked car seats, same Starbucks apron, same tiny studio apartment with furniture from Goodwill. The only difference was the banking app on my phone that showed enough money to buy the entire strip mall where I worked. That evening, I was getting ready for what I knew would be the most revealing family dinner of my life. I'd been planning this for days, rehearsing my performance, preparing for their reactions. I drove to my mother's house in Scottsdale, the same house where I'd grown up feeling like the family disappointment. As I pulled into the driveway, I could see Tyler's BMW and Madison's white Lexus, both expensive cars funded by their successful careers, while I drove a decade-old Honda with a broken air conditioner. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at the house. Spanish tile roof, desert landscaping, the kind of upper-middle-class suburban home that represented everything I'd failed to achieve in my family's eyes. But I wasn't the same person who had grown up here feeling inadequate. This person had $89 million and a plan. I walked through the front door into the familiar chaos of Sunday dinner prep. The house smelled like my mother's famous green chile enchiladas, and the sound of the evening news played from the living room where my father was watching golf highlights. "Ashley!" my mother Linda called from the kitchen, not looking up from the stove. "Finally, we were wondering if you were coming." I walked into the living room where Tyler was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Madison was sitting at the dining table, surrounded by wedding magazines and fabric samples, completely absorbed in planning her perfect day. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Tyler barely looked up. "So, did you think about what we talked about? About paying us back for Mom's car?" Straight to business. "No, how was your week? No small talk. Just money." "I've been busy," I said carefully. Madison finally glanced up from her wedding planning. "Busy doing what? Making coffee?" She laughed at her own joke. "Ash, it's $600. It's not exactly a fortune." $600. The casual dismissiveness made my blood pressure spike. $600 was my entire weekly take-home pay from Starbucks. It was my groceries for a month. It was my car insurance for 6 months. But for Tyler and Madison, who made real money, it was nothing. "Where's Dad?" I asked, changing the subject. "Watching golf," Madison said, already turning back to her magazines. "He's in a mood because Tyler told him you haven't paid us back yet. He keeps saying how disappointed he is that his youngest daughter won't help her family. The guilt trip, right on schedule. He says it's embarrassing," Tyler added without looking up from his phone. His own daughter ignoring her family obligations. I walked into the living room where my father Mike was in his recliner, remote in hand, watching the Golf Channel with the volume too loud. "Hey, Dad," I said. He muted the TV and looked at me with obvious disappointment. "Ashley, your brother says you've been ignoring their messages. I've been thinking about it," I said carefully. "Thinking about what? Helping your family when they helped Mom? When did that become something you need to think about?" The question was rhetorical, but the judgment was real. "Dad, $600 is what?" he interrupted. "Is too much to help your mother? To pay back your siblings who stepped up when you didn't?" The rewriting of history was breathtaking. In my father's version, I was the one who had failed the family, not the one who had been expected to contribute money I didn't have. "It's just that money is really tight right now," I said. "Money is tight for everyone, Ashley. That's what family is for. When times are tough, we help each other. Your brother and sister understand that. They have real careers, real responsibilities, but they still found a way to help. Real careers, real responsibilities." The implication was clear. My work didn't count. My struggles didn't matter. My financial situation wasn't real enough to consider. "I'll figure something out," I said, which was both completely true and completely false. "You'll figure something out," Dad repeated, shaking his head. "Ashley, you're 24 years old. When are you going to stop figuring things out and start being a responsible adult?" There it was, the fundamental judgment that had shaped our relationship my entire life. In my father's eyes, I wasn't a young woman struggling to build a life. I was a failure who needed to grow up. Dinner was exactly what I expected. Tense, uncomfortable, and full of pointed comments about responsibility and family loyalty. Tyler talked about his promotion at work, his new salary, his plans to buy a house. Madison showed off fabric samples for her wedding dress, talked about the honeymoon in Italy that Brad was paying for, discussed their plans to buy a condo in Scottsdale. "The wedding planner says we need to finalize the catering menu," Madison was saying, cutting into her enchilada. "We're going with the premium package. It's a little more expensive, but you only get married once, right?" "How much more expensive?" Mom asked. "Only like 3,000 more," Madison said with a wave of her hand. "Brad's dad is helping with costs anyway. $3,000. 5 times what they'd asked me to contribute to Mom's car. But that was just a little more expensive for Madison. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said. "You deserve the best." Tyler nodded in agreement. Life's short. Spend money on the things that matter. But somehow, when I couldn't immediately come up with $600, I was irresponsible and selfish. "Speaking of money," Tyler said, looking directly at me. "Ash, any update on when you can pay us back?" All conversation stopped. Everyone looked at me. "I'm working on it," I said. "Working on it how?" Madison asked. "It's been a week. I'm picking up extra shifts." "At Starbucks," Tyler said. It wasn't a question. It was a judgment. "Yes, at Starbucks." "Ashley," Mom said gently, "maybe it's time to think about getting a real job. Something with benefits, with a future. You can't make coffee forever. A real job." There it was again. "I do freelance marketing too," I said. "For like what, $100 a month?" Madison scoffed. "Ash, that's not a career." "That's a hobby." Tyler leaned forward, adopting the tone he used when he was about to give me life advice. "Look, sis, I get it. You want to be creative. You want to be your own boss. But at some point, you have to face reality. You're 24. You can't keep living paycheck to paycheck and expecting family to bail you out." "I'm not expecting anyone to bail me out," I said quietly. "Then why haven't you paid us back?" Madison asked. The logic was circular and infuriating. I was irresponsible for not having money, but also irresponsible for not giving them money I didn't have. After dinner, I followed Tyler and Madison out to the front patio. They were both on their phones, probably posting Instagram stories about family dinner. "Tyler," I said, "can I talk to you for a minute?" He looked up, annoyed at being interrupted. "What's up?" "I've been thinking about what you said. About responsibility. About family helping family." Madison didn't look up from her phone. "Please tell me you're not about to ask for more time to pay us back." "Actually," I said, "I need to ask for help myself. I'm in serious trouble." That got their attention. Tyler put his phone away. Madison looked up with something that might have been interest, or might have been annoyance. "What kind of trouble?" Tyler asked. "Financial trouble. Big trouble. My marketing business is failing completely, and Starbucks is cutting hours. I'm about to lose my apartment, my car, everything." The silence that followed was telling. "How much trouble?" Madison asked carefully. "I need $3,000. Just to stay afloat until I can find steady work." Tyler and Madison looked at each other with one of those sibling glances that communicated volumes. "3,000? Tyler said slowly. "Ashley, that's serious money." "It's exactly what you're spending on upgraded catering," I pointed out to Madison. "That's completely different," Madison said quickly. "That's my wedding. That's a once-in-a-lifetime event. And this is me potentially becoming homeless." Tyler ran his hand through his hair. "Ash, look, if you needed like $200 for groceries, sure. But $3,000? That changes our whole financial picture." I stared at him. "You just got a promotion. You told us your salary increased by $15,000 a year. That doesn't mean I have $3,000 lying around. I've got my own expenses, my own goals. I'm saving for a house down payment. And I'm trying to save myself from eviction." Madison sighed heavily. "Ashley, you can't put this kind of pressure on family. It's not fair to expect us to solve your financial problems. But it's fair to expect me to solve yours. $600 and $3,000 are completely different amounts," Tyler said. "But the principle is the same. Family helping family when someone is in trouble." "This isn't the same thing," Madison insisted. $600 is a reasonable family favor. $3,000 that's like asking us to subsidize your lifestyle choices. Lifestyle choices, like choosing to eat and have a place to live. "What lifestyle choices?" I asked. "The marketing business," Tyler said. "Everyone knows those freelance things don't work out. You should have focused on getting a real job with steady income instead of chasing these entrepreneurial fantasies. And living in that expensive apartment," Madison added. "You could have gotten a roommate, moved somewhere cheaper, made better financial decisions." The victim blaming was breathtaking. According to them, I was in trouble because I had made poor choices, not because I was trying to build something while working a minimum wage job. "So you won't help me," I said. Tyler's voice softened, but not his message. "We love you, Ashley. But sometimes helping someone means not enabling their bad decisions. Sometimes you have to let people figure things out on their own. It'll make you stronger in the long run," Madison added helpfully. I looked at both of them. "Let me make sure I understand. You won't lend me $3,000 to prevent me from being evicted, but you expected me to come up with $600 to fix Mom's car. Those are totally different situations," Madison said. "How?" She opened and closed her mouth, clearly struggling to find an answer that didn't expose her hypocrisy. Tyler jumped in. "Look, here's some free advice. Give up the marketing thing. Focus on getting a real job. Maybe something in an office, something with benefits. Move back in with Mom and Dad temporarily to save money. In a year or two, you'll be in a much better position. And if I'm evicted next week?" Madison shrugged. "Mom and Dad have your old room. It's not ideal, but family takes care of family, right? Just until you get back on your feet." The solution, in their minds, was for me to give up my independence, move back in with my parents, abandon my business dreams, and basically regress to being a teenager again, all to avoid them having to actually help with money. "I'll think about it," I said. "You do that?" Madison said, already turning to go back inside. "And Ashley, maybe this is a wake-up call. Maybe this will teach you to be more realistic about your capabilities." They walked back into the house, leaving me alone on the patio. I stood there for a moment, listening to the distant sound of traffic and feeling the desert heat radiating off the concrete. Inside, I could hear Tyler and Madison laughing about something, probably already moving on from our conversation. I pulled out my phone and looked at my banking app. $89,200,000. Then I scrolled through my contacts. The test wasn't over. Tyler and Madison had failed spectacularly, but they weren't the only people I'd helped over the years. I needed to be thorough. I started with my college roommate Brittany. Brittany and I had been best friends at ASU before I dropped out. We'd stayed close, even after I left school. Last year, Brittany had gotten into serious financial trouble when her parents cut her off for dating someone they didn't approve of. She'd been about to drop out of school herself when she called me, crying, asking for help with tuition. I had given her $2,800, literally every penny I had saved, so she could finish her degree. She'd graduated with honors 3 months ago and landed a job at a marketing firm in Phoenix. She'd promised to pay me back once she got established, but I'd never pushed for it because friendship was more important than money. Now, 6 months later, it was time to see if that sentiment worked both ways. I called Brittany's number. It was almost 9 p.m., but I knew she'd be awake. She always stayed up late scrolling social media. "Ashley," she answered enthusiastically. "How are you? I was just thinking about you." "Hey, Britt. I need to talk to you about something important." "Sure, what's going on?" I launched into my story. I told her about my business failing, about Starbucks cutting my hours, about being behind on rent and facing eviction. I made my voice sound stressed and desperate. "Oh my God, Ash," she said. "That's terrible. I'm so sorry. I hate to ask this, but I'm running out of options. I need $3,000 to save my apartment and keep my business going. I'll pay you back with interest." There was a long pause. I could hear her TV in the background. Some reality show she was probably binge-watching. $3,000? She said finally. "Wow, that's a lot of money." "I know it is. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate." Another pause. "Ashley, you know I love you. You know what you did for me with tuition. That literally saved my life. But $3,000. I just started this job. I've got student loans. I'm trying to build up my savings. I gave you $2,800 when you needed it," I said quietly. "I know, and I'll never forget that. But that was different. That was school. That was my future. This is what? This is business stuff. You'll figure it out, you always do. You're resourceful, you're smart. But me? I can't risk my financial stability when I'm just getting started." I understood perfectly. When she needed help, it was an investment in her future. When I needed help, it was just business stuff I'd figure out. "What if it was just a loan?" I pressed. "What if I gave you collateral?" "Ashley, I wish I could. I really do. But I'm barely covering my own expenses. If something happened and I couldn't pay you back, I can't put myself in that position." "Okay," I said. "I understand. But hey, if you need a place to crash while you figure things out, my couch is available. And I know some people in marketing who might have freelance work." The couch. Emotional support, but not financial support. Networking opportunities, but not actual money. "Thanks, Britt. I'll think about it." After I hung up, I sat in my car staring at my phone. The pattern was already clear, but I needed to be thorough. My next call was to my cousin Jessica, my aunt's daughter who lived in Tempe. 2 years ago, Jessica had called me in tears because she'd gotten into credit card debt trying to keep up with her sorority sister's lifestyle. She owed almost $8,000, and her parents had refused to help, saying it was her responsibility to deal with. Jessica had begged me to co-sign for a debt consolidation loan because her credit was shot. I'd hesitated because co-signing meant I'd be responsible if she defaulted, but Jessica had been desperate, promising she'd make every payment on time. She had kept her promise. The loan was almost paid off now, but I had taken a real risk for her, a risk that could have destroyed my credit if things had gone wrong. "Ashley," Jessica answered warmly. "What's up, cuz?" I told her the story. Business failing, facing eviction, needed $3,000. "Oh no," Jessica said. "That's awful. I'm really sorry you're going through this. I hate to ask, but I'm desperate. Could you help me out? I'll pay you back with interest." $3,000? Jessica's voice changed slightly. "Ash, I wish I could help, But I'm really tight on money right now. I'm saving up to move to a better apartment, and I've got that loan payment every month. The loan I co-signed for, I reminded her. Yes, and I'm so grateful for that. I've made every payment just like I promised. But you won't help me now. It's not that I won't help. It's that I can't. $3,000 is my entire emergency fund. I can't wipe out my savings for business problems. Business problems. As if losing my home wasn't personal. What about a smaller amount? I asked. Jessica thought for a moment. I could maybe do $300. That's what I can spare without affecting my own stability. $300. 1/10 of what I needed. Thanks, I said. But that won't really solve the problem. Look, Ashley, maybe this is a sign that you should pivot. The freelance marketing thing is tough. Maybe it's time to get a steady job, build up some stability. There are lots of marketing jobs in Phoenix. Everyone had advice. No one had money. After hanging up with Jessica, I realized I was crying. Not because the rejections surprised me. They were exactly what I'd expected. But because each conversation confirmed what I'd been afraid to admit. I was not these people's priority. I was their emergency contact, their reliable option when they needed something. But when I needed something, I was a risk they couldn't afford. I had one more call to make, and this one was going to break my heart. Mrs. Rodriguez had been my high school Spanish teacher, but she'd become so much more than that. She was the one who had encouraged me to apply for college scholarships. She was the one who had written my recommendation letters. When her husband died 2 years ago, and she struggled with medical bills, I had helped her financially several times. Small amounts here and there, money for prescriptions and groceries that she couldn't afford on her teacher's pension. Mrs. Rodriguez was 68 years old, retired, living on a fixed income. If anyone had a legitimate reason to say no, it was her. But I needed to complete the test. Ashley, mija, Mrs. Rodriguez answered warmly. What a wonderful surprise. How are you, sweetheart? The affection in her voice hit me harder than I expected. This woman had shown me more maternal care in 4 years of high school than my own mother had in a lifetime. I told her the story, but this time I couldn't keep the emotion out of my voice. By the time I finished, I was fighting back real tears. Oh, Ashley, Mrs. Rodriguez said, her voice full of genuine concern. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I know it's a lot to ask, I said, but I don't know where else to turn. I need $3,000. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, thinking. Ashley, she said finally, you know my situation. The pension, the medical bills. I don't have $3,000. I felt crushing disappointment, even though I'd expected this answer. But, she continued, I have $400 in my checking account. It's my grocery money for the month, but you can have it. All of it. I started crying again, but these were different tears. Mrs. Rodriguez, I can't take your grocery money. You listen to me, mija, she said firmly. When you helped me with my medications, when you bought groceries for me after Roberto died, when you drove me to doctor appointments, you never asked for anything in return. You treated me like family. Her voice broke slightly. Family helps family, Ashley. I don't have much, but what I have is yours. You come by tomorrow and I'll give you that $400. And you don't worry about paying me back until you're strong again. I was sobbing now. This 68-year-old woman on a teacher's pension, who could barely afford groceries, was willing to give me everything she had. Meanwhile, my brother who made 6 figures, and my sister who was spending $40,000 on a wedding, had found reasons why they couldn't help. Mrs. Rodriguez, I can't take your grocery money. I won't do that to you. You're not doing anything to me, mija. I'm choosing to help someone I love. That's what people do. What will you eat? She chuckled softly. I've got plenty of rice and beans in the pantry. I'll be fine. Besides, the church has a food bank. A church food bank. A 68-year-old retired teacher was willing to get food from charity so she could help me. I love you, Mrs. Rodriguez, I said through my tears. I love you too, mija. You come see me tomorrow. After hanging up, I sat in my car crying. Not angry tears, but the kind of tears that come from witnessing real love, real sacrifice. Mrs. Rodriguez had just shown me what family actually looked like. And it had nothing to do with blood or shared DNA or legal obligations. It was about choosing to love someone enough to sacrifice for them. But I couldn't take her money. I wouldn't. That $400 was staying exactly where it was, because I had a different plan now. The next morning, I called in sick to Starbucks for the first time in a year. Instead of going to work, I drove to Sarah Harrison's office. "Ashley," she said, looking surprised. "Is everything all right?" "I need to accelerate our timeline," I said. "And I need your help with something else. Something that's going to require very creative legal work." She leaned forward, interested. "I'm listening." I spent the next hour telling Sarah about my family test, about Tyler and Madison's refusal to help while expecting me to pay them back for Mom's car, about their lectures on responsibility while planning expensive purchases, about my parents' disappointment in me for not immediately offering money I didn't have. And I told her about Mrs. Rodriguez, who was willing to give me her grocery money. "What did you have in mind?" Sarah asked. "I want to create a foundation," I said. "I want to help people who've been abandoned by their families. People like Mrs. Rodriguez who deserve support." "How large of a foundation?" "Let's start with $30 million. Sarah's eyebrows rose. $30 million is substantial. And I want to do something else first. I want to give my family one final test. I want to see exactly how greedy they are when they think I'm truly desperate, and then see how they react when they find out I'm rich." She smiled slowly. "That's therapeutic and completely legal." Over the next week, Sarah helped me set up the Morgan Foundation with initial funding of $30 million. She also helped me plan what she called the Revelation, a carefully orchestrated family meeting that would expose everyone's true character. But first, I had something important to do. I drove to Mrs. Rodriguez's small apartment complex in Central Phoenix, a modest place that had seen better decades. I found her in her tiny one-bedroom unit, grading papers for the tutoring work she did to supplement her pension. "Ashley," she said, opening the door with a huge smile. "Come in, mija. I have that money for you." She shuffled to a small desk and opened her checkbook with shaky hands. "Mrs. Rodriguez," I said gently, "I need to tell you something." She looked up from writing the check. "What is it, sweetheart?" "I don't actually need the money." Her eyebrows furrowed. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "I won the lottery. $173 million. I was testing people to see who would help me when they thought I had nothing." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she started laughing. Actually laughing. "You won the lottery," she said. "You won the lottery and you asked me for money." "I had to know," I said. "I had to know who in my life actually cared about me versus who just saw me as useful." She shook her head, still smiling. "And what did you learn?" "I learned that my family loves what I can do for them, but they don't love me. And I learned that you're more family to me than anyone who shares my blood." Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, mija, I want you to be the first board member of my foundation," I said. $30 million to help people who've been abandoned by their families when they needed help most." She sat down heavily in her armchair. $30 million? And Mrs. Rodriguez? Your rent, your medical bills, your financial worries, they're over. You're family now. Real family. She cried then. We both did. 3 days later, I was ready for the final test. I texted the family group chat. "Emergency family meeting tomorrow. Mom's house. 6 p.m. Please don't miss this." Tyler responded immediately. "What's the emergency?" I wrote back. "Need to discuss something important with everyone." Madison chimed in. "Can't do it. Dress fitting appointment." Mom. "Madison, cancel it. If Ashley is calling an emergency meeting, it must be serious." Interesting. Suddenly they were concerned about my well-being. The next evening, I walked into my mother's house carrying a leather portfolio that Sarah had provided. Inside were documents that would change everything. Tyler, Madison, Mom, and Dad were all sitting in the living room, looking worried. Mom jumped up when I saw me. "Ashley, what's wrong? You look terrible." "Are you okay?" I did look terrible, and it was intentional. I hadn't slept. I was wearing my oldest clothes, and I'd spent the day practicing looking defeated. "I need to tell you all something," I said, sitting down across from them. And it's going to be difficult to hear. Oh, God, Madison said. Are you pregnant? Did something happen with a guy? No, I said. It's much worse than that. Tyler leaned forward, looking genuinely concerned for the first time in years. I lied about my financial situation, I continued. It's much worse than I told you. My business didn't just fail, it collapsed completely. I lost money, a lot of money. I invested everything I had, plus money I borrowed from clients, in a marketing campaign that turned out to be fraudulent. My father's face went pale. How much money? Everything. Plus about $15,000 in debt. Credit cards, personal loans, money I borrowed from clients for their campaigns. Mom gasped. Ashley, no. It gets worse, I said. I haven't paid rent in 6 weeks. My car is about to be repossessed. My credit is destroyed. And I paused dramatically. Some of the clients are threatening to press charges. Complete silence. Charges for what? Dad asked quietly. Fraud, theft, using their money for personal expenses instead of their campaigns. The police called yesterday. Tyler stood up and started pacing. This is bad. This is really bad. How much legal trouble are we talking about? Madison asked. Felony charges. The lawyer I consulted said I could be looking at 3 to 5 years in prison. My mother put her hand over her heart. Madison went completely white. Ashley, Madison said slowly, this affects all of us. If you're arrested, if there's a trial, our name will be in the papers. My wedding is in 6 weeks. Brad's family. This could destroy our reputation, Tyler added. My job, my professional network, everything I've built. I stared at them. Their first concern wasn't my welfare or how to help me. It was how my problems would damage them. I need help, I said simply. I need family support, and I need money for a good criminal defense lawyer. How much money? Tyler asked immediately. $25,000 minimum. Maybe more. The silence was deafening. $25,000, Madison repeated slowly. For a lawyer. To keep me out of prison, I clarified. Tyler sat back down. Ashley, we don't have $25,000. You're planning a $40,000 wedding. That's completely different. That's our wedding fund. That's money we've been saving for years. We can't just liquidate our wedding for keeping your sister out of prison? Madison's voice turned sharp. It's not that simple, Ashley. $25,000 is serious money. And honestly, if you're really facing criminal charges, there's no guarantee that even the best lawyer can help you. I looked at my parents. Mom? Dad? Dad cleared his throat. Ashley, we don't have that kind of money. And even if we did, maybe this is something you need to face as an adult. Face as an adult? Maybe this is the consequence of the poor decisions you've been making. The risky business ventures, the failure to get stable employment, ignoring our advice about getting a real job. Mom nodded sadly. We tried to warn you about the marketing business. We told you to be more practical. So you won't help me. It's not that we won't help, Tyler said. It's that we can't help with this level of crisis. This is beyond family help. This is serious legal trouble that could affect all of us. But last month you expected me to pay you back for Mom's car. A car repair and criminal defense are completely different things, Madison said. One is a reasonable family expense. The other is, this could ruin all of us. So, when you need small help, I'm expected to provide it, I said. But when I need big help, I'm on my own. You're being dramatic, Tyler said. We're not abandoning you. We're just being realistic about what we can handle. What if I could prove my innocence? I asked. What if I could show you that I'm not actually guilty? How? Mom asked. I reached into my portfolio and pulled out a single document. I placed it on the coffee table. What is this? Madison asked, leaning forward. Bank statement, I said quietly. Tyler picked it up and his eyes went wide as he read. What is this? Read it out loud, I said. Account balance, he stammered. $89,200,000. Madison snatched the paper. This has to be fake. It's real, I said. 2 months ago, I won the Arizona lottery. $173 million. After taxes and fees, I netted about $89 million. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. Dad was the first to speak. You won the lottery? Yes. And you've been lying to us this entire time? I've been testing you. Tyler's face was cycling through emotions faster than I could track. Testing us? Testing to see who would help me when they thought I had nothing, and who would abandon me when I needed support. Madison was staring at the bank statement like it was written in hieroglyphics. $89 million? You all failed, I said simply. Completely and utterly failed. Tyler exploded. You bitch! You lying bitch! Do you have any idea what you put us through? What I put you through. Your biggest concern was how my legal troubles would affect your reputation. Because we thought you were actually going to prison, and your first instinct was to protect yourselves instead of helping me. Madison was on her feet now. This is insane. We were trying to be responsible. We were trying to protect our futures. By abandoning me when I needed help most. We weren't abandoning you, Tyler shouted. We just couldn't afford to throw away $25,000 on a hopeless case. But it wasn't hopeless. I told you I could prove my innocence. How were we supposed to know that? You weren't supposed to know. You were supposed to trust me. You were supposed to help me because I'm family. My father had been silent through this exchange, just staring at the bank statement. Finally, he looked up at me. You have $89 million. Yes. And you let us worry. You let us think our daughter was going to prison. I wanted to see if you'd stand by me when things looked hopeless. But they weren't hopeless. You were never in any real danger. I was in real danger. I was in danger of learning that my family doesn't actually love me. Madison sat back down, and I could see her mind working. Ashley, this is incredible news. This changes everything. Does it? Of course it does. You're rich. We're all rich. This is the best thing that could happen to our family. Our family? Tyler was nodding enthusiastically. This is amazing. Think of what we can do now. Think of the opportunities. We? I repeated. Well, yeah, family. We stick together, right? We help each other. I reached into my portfolio and pulled out a thick stack of legal documents. I spread them across the coffee table. What are those? Mom asked nervously. These are cease and desist orders. You are legally prohibited from discussing my lottery winnings with anyone. You are prohibited from claiming any association with my wealth. You are prohibited from using my name for any financial gain. Madison picked up one of the documents. You can't do this to us. I absolutely can. And these, I pulled out another set, are no contact orders. You are prohibited from contacting me except through my attorney. Ashley, Dad said quietly, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. But we're your family. Family helps each other in times of crisis. Family doesn't laugh when someone asks for help. Family doesn't abandon someone when they're facing their darkest moment. Tyler was reading the legal documents, getting angrier by the second. This is crazy. You can't cut us out. I'm not cutting you out. You cut yourselves out when you showed me exactly who you are. Madison stood up again. Okay, fine. You're hurt. You're angry. We get it. But let's be practical here. You have more money than you could spend in a lifetime. What would it hurt to share it with family? The same amount it would have hurt you to share $25,000 to keep me out of prison. But that was when we thought you were actually guilty. I was guilty. I was guilty of trusting that my family would support me when I needed them most. Now I know better. I stood up and gathered the legal documents. You have 48 hours to comply with these orders. My attorney will be monitoring your social media and any attempts to contact me. As I headed for the door, Madison called after me. Ashley, you can't do this. We love you. I stopped and turned around. Love? 3 hours ago I told you I might go to prison and Tyler called it a hopeless case you couldn't afford to support. That's not love. That's calculation. I opened the door, then paused. Oh, and Tyler? About your house down payment and your financial planning? You might want to recalculate your budget. According to my financial advisor's research, your company is planning major layoffs in the next quarter. Your department is being eliminated. Tyler went white. That's not... How do you... Money buys very good information. Madison, you might want to have an honest conversation with Brad about his family's financial situation. That trust fund he's always talking about, it's mostly gone. His father's construction business is 3 months from bankruptcy. Madison looked like she was going to faint. That's not true. My people are very thorough. You might want to reconsider that expensive wedding. And definitely reconsider the Italian honeymoon. I walked out of my mother's house for the last time. Behind me, I could hear Tyler shouting at Madison about the wedding budget, Madison screaming at him about his job security, and my parents sitting in stunned silence. Outside, Sarah Harrison was waiting in her car. "How did it go?" she asked as I got in. "Exactly as predicted," I said. "They failed completely." "And how do you feel?" I thought about it. Free. For the first time in my life, I feel completely free. 4 months later, I was standing in the main conference room of the Morgan Foundation headquarters in downtown Phoenix. The space had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the desert mountains, and it was filled with people who had become my chosen family. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, now serving as board chairman and looking healthier than I'd seen her in years. The foundation's health insurance had gotten her access to specialists who were helping manage her arthritis and other age-related conditions. My assistant director was Alex Chen, a 26-year-old who had been disowned by his family for being gay. He'd been living in his car when we found him, despite having a degree in social work from ASU. Now he was making $80,000 a year and had his own apartment in Tempe. "The applications this week are heartbreaking and inspiring," Alex was saying, flipping through files. "We have a teenage girl in Flagstaff whose parents kicked her out for refusing an arranged marriage. A veteran in Tucson whose family abandoned him when his PTSD got bad. A college student in Phoenix whose family disowned her for changing majors. People like us," I said. "People like we were," Mrs. Rodriguez corrected gently. The foundation had distributed $18 million in 4 months. We'd helped 623 people who had been abandoned by their families during crisis moments. People who deserved support, but couldn't get it from the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally. "Any word from your biological family?" Alex asked. I'd started calling Tyler, Madison, and my parents my biological family to distinguish them from my actual family. "Tyler got laid off last month," I said. "Madison postponed her wedding indefinitely when Brad's family money situation became public. They're both living with my parents now." "And your parents?" "My father called the foundation office last week, not asking for me directly, but inquiring whether we provide assistance to family members of lottery winners who are going through temporary difficulties." Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head. "The audacity. Our legal team made it very clear that family members who abandon someone during their crisis are not eligible for assistance when they discover that person has resources." Alex laughed. "What did he say to that?" "He hung up, but he tried again 2 days later, claiming that as my father, he deserved some portion of my winnings under Arizona family law. That's ridiculous. Sarah's legal team destroyed that argument in about 5 minutes. Lottery winnings belong exclusively to the ticket holder. There's no legal basis for family members to claim a share unless they actually contributed to buying the ticket. My computer chimed with an email. I opened it and smiled. "This is why we do what we do," I said, reading aloud. It's from David Martinez in Tucson. He writes, "Ms. Morgan, it's been 3 months since your foundation helped me when my family disowned me for marrying outside our religion. Because of your assistance, I was able to finish my teaching degree, and my wife was able to get the medical care she needed. But more than the money, you showed me that family isn't about blood or shared beliefs. It's about people who choose to support you when you need it most. My wife and I have started volunteering at a shelter for LGBTQ+ youth because we want to pass on the kindness you showed us. Thank you for teaching us that real family is the people who show up when everyone else walks away." I looked around the room at the faces of people who had become my real family. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been willing to give me her grocery money. Alex, who understood what it felt like to be rejected by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. The foundation staff, who worked every day to help people who had been abandoned. "Sometimes," I said, "the best gift life can give you is showing you who your real family is." That afternoon, I drove to Mrs. Rodriguez's new apartment, a beautiful 2-bedroom place in a nice complex in central Phoenix that the foundation was paying for. I knocked on her door, and she answered wearing a bright smile and a new dress. "Ashley, mija," she said, hugging me tight. "Come in. I just made fresh cookies." Her apartment was warm and comfortable, filled with photos of her students over the years and artwork they'd made for her. There was a special shelf dedicated to photos of foundation events and the people we'd helped. "I have news," I said as we sat down with coffee and cookies. "Good news, I hope." "The best news. We're expanding the foundation nationally. We're opening offices in 5 more cities to help people who've been abandoned by their families." Mrs. Rodriguez clapped her hands together. "Oh, mija, that's wonderful. And I want you to oversee the expansion. Full salary, travel budget, the chance to build something that will help thousands of people." She teared up. "You've already given me so much. You gave me more. You showed me what unconditional love looks like. You taught me that family isn't about DNA. It's about choice." As I was leaving, Mrs. Rodriguez pressed a small wrapped package into my hands. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it when you get home," she said with a mysterious smile. Later that evening, I unwrapped the package in my new penthouse apartment overlooking the valley. Inside was a small framed photo. It was a picture of me from high school graduation, taken by Mrs. Rodriguez when no family members showed up for the ceremony. In the photo, I was standing alone in my cap and gown, but I was smiling. Below it was a newer photo, taken last month at our foundation gala. In this one, I was surrounded by Mrs. Rodriguez, Alex, and 30 other people who had either received help from the foundation or worked to provide it. We were all laughing, all genuinely happy. 2 very different definitions of family. On the back of the frame, Mrs. Rodriguez had written, "Family, the people who choose to love you exactly as you are." That evening, I was having dinner with Alex at a small Mexican restaurant we'd discovered near the foundation offices. It had become our weekly tradition. Dinner and conversation about the work we were doing and the lives we were changing. "Any regrets?" Alex asked over dessert. "About what?" "About cutting ties with your biological family. About the way everything happened." I thought carefully. "None. I'm sad that they couldn't be the people I hoped they were, but I'm grateful I learned who they really were." What if they apologized? What if they genuinely tried to make amends? I think forgiveness and reconciliation are different things. I can forgive them for showing me their true character without putting myself back in position to be hurt again. Alex nodded. "I understand that completely." The test revealed exactly what I needed to know, and it led me to build something beautiful with people who know how to love properly. "Speaking of which," Alex said, pulling out an envelope, "I have something for you." I opened it to find a handwritten letter. "Dear Ashley," I read aloud, "my name is Maria Santos and I'm 16 years old. Last month your foundation helped me when my parents kicked me out for refusing to quit school and get married. You gave me housing assistance and a scholarship so I could finish high school. But more than that, you gave me hope. You showed me that there are people in the world who believe young women deserve education and choice. I wanted you to know that I'm going to college next year to study social work, and someday I want to work for your foundation. Thank you for showing me that family is the people who fight for your dreams, not the people who try to take them away." I looked up at Alex, whose eyes were bright with tears. "She's going to state next year," he said. "Full scholarship. She wants to come back and work for us after graduation." "That's beautiful. The ripple effects of what you're doing, they're going to last generations." As we walked out of the restaurant, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. I'd started with a simple test. Who would help me when they thought I had nothing? The answer had been devastating and liberating at the same time. My biological family had failed completely, but in failing, they had freed me to find my real family. People who chose to love me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. People who showed up not just when it was convenient, but when it was necessary. 6 months later, I was standing in front of a beautiful house in North Phoenix that the foundation had just purchased. It wasn't for me. It was our 3rd group home for teenagers who had been rejected by their families. Mrs. Rodriguez was with me, along with Alex and our growing team of staff members and volunteers. We were getting ready to cut the ribbon and officially open the home. "Before we do this," I said to the small crowd gathered, "I want to tell you about the test that started everything." I told them about winning the lottery, about testing my family, about learning who would stand by me and who would abandon me. I told them about the pain of discovering that the people I thought loved me actually just loved what I could do for them. But I also learned I continued, that real family isn't about blood or obligation or shared last names. Real family is about people who choose you, people who show up, people who sacrifice for you, not because they have to, but because they love you. I looked around at the faces in the crowd, people who had been abandoned by their biological families, but had found chosen families instead, people who understood that love is about action, not just words. This house, I said, is for young people who are learning the same lesson I learned. That family is something you build, not something you inherit, and that sometimes the most important thing that can happen to you is discovering that the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally actually loved you very conditionally. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward with the scissors. Because once you know that truth, she said, continuing my thought, you're free to find the people who will love you the right way. We cut the ribbon together. Me, Mrs. Rodriguez, Alex, and Maria Santos, the teenager whose letter had moved me so much. She was starting college in the fall, but she'd spent the summer volunteering with us, helping other young people who were going through what she'd experienced. As the small crowd cheered and we walked through the house that would soon be home to 12 teenagers who needed family, I felt a deep sense of completion. The test that had started in pain and disappointment had led to something beautiful and lasting. Later that evening, I was alone in my apartment, looking out at the lights of Phoenix spreading across the valley. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ashley, it's Tyler. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know something. I was wrong. We were all wrong. We failed you when you needed us most, and we have no excuse for that. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking for money. I just want you to know that watching what you've built, seeing the people you're helping, it's shown me what real family looks like. I'm proud of who you've become, even though I had nothing to do with it. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive us, even if you never want to see us again. You deserved better from us. You deserved love without conditions, and we failed to give you that. I'm sorry. I read the message twice, then deleted it. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt, but I felt no anger, no bitterness, just a quiet sense of closure. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to Mrs. Rodriguez, Alex, and the rest of our team. Tomorrow we start planning for our biggest expansion yet, I wrote. I want to open foundation offices in 10 more cities. I want to help 1,000 more people who have been abandoned by their families. Because I've learned that the most powerful thing you can do is turn your pain into purpose, your rejection into redemption. I paused, thinking about the 24-year-old barista who had been afraid she'd never amount to anything, who had felt like a disappointment to everyone who mattered. Family, I continued typing, isn't about blood or shared history or legal obligations. Family is about showing up. Family is about choosing each other every day. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Family is about love without conditions, support without expectations, and sacrifice without keeping score. And sometimes, the greatest gift life can give you is the clarity to see who truly loves you, and who only loves what you can do for them. Because once you see that clearly, you're free to build the family you deserve with people who know how to love properly. I finished the email and sent it, then walked out onto my balcony to look at the stars over the desert. Somewhere out there were people facing the same test I had faced, discovering whether the people they trusted would stand by them or abandon them when things got difficult. Tomorrow the foundation would be there to catch them when they fell. We would be the family they needed when their biological families failed them. And that, I realized, was the most valuable thing my lottery winnings had bought me. Not the money itself, but the wisdom to see love clearly, and the freedom to choose and be chosen by people who understood what family really means. Have you ever tested the people closest to you to see who really loves you? Have you ever discovered the difference between people who love you and people who love what you can do for them? Let me know in the comments about a time when you learned who your real family was. And if this story inspired you to look more carefully at the relationships in your own life, hit that subscribe button. Because family isn't about sharing DNA. It's about sharing values. It's about people who choose to show up when everything falls apart, not just when everything is going well. And sometimes, the most important test you can give is not the test of loyalty when things are good, but the test of love when things are impossible. Because that's when you discover who your real family is.